They found the mirror at an estate sale in the outskirts of town, a sprawling Victorian house with broken shutters, wild ivy, and a faint smell of dust and rain. Ellen and Mark Rivers weren't the kind of couple that believed in ghost stories. She was a history teacher, he was a contractor. They collected antiques, furniture, clocks, paintings, anything that carried a story. When they saw the mirror, Ellen froze. It was beautiful, 7 feet tall, framed in black walnut carved with vines and angelic faces worn down by time. The glass was slightly clouded, not enough to ruin the reflection, but enough to make it look deeper somehow. The seller, an elderly man in a beige hat, noticed her staring. "Came from the old Harrow estate," he said quietly. "People say the owner went mad looking into it too long." He smiled like it was a joke. Mark chuckled. Guess he didn't like what he saw. They bought it for $80. The mirror fit perfectly in the hallway of their old farmhouse. That night, Ellen stood in front of it, running her fingers along the carved frame. It seemed to hum faintly in the quiet, like something inside was vibrating against the glass. She told herself it was her imagination, old wood settling. Still, as she turned to leave, she caught something in the reflection. A faint movement. Not her, not Mark. Something else, just behind her shoulder, too quick to see clearly. She spun around. Empty hallway. She laughed nervously. "You're tired, Ellen, that's all." For days, everything was normal. The mirror became part of the house, the way old things do, blending into the background. But Ellen noticed something strange. Every time she passed by it, she felt watched. Not in a paranoid way, more like someone was standing quietly behind the glass waiting for her to notice. Then she began hearing faint whispers, a soft, rhythmic murmur late at night when the house was still. Mark never heard it. "Old pipes," he said. "This place groans when it rains." But the whispers didn't sound like pipes. They sounded like words. One evening, Ellen was reading in the living room when she heard her name. Soft, close. She looked up, no one there. Then she saw it again. In the mirror's reflection, Mark stood in the hallway facing her. She smiled. "Hey, you scared me." But when she turned around, the hallway was empty. When she looked back at the mirror, he was gone. That night she couldn't sleep. Mark snored softly beside her while the rain hit the windows. At 2:43 a.m., a faint tapping sound echoed through the house. Tap, tap, tap. It came from downstairs. From the hallway, she got up, barefoot, clutching her robe. The sound grew louder as she approached the mirror. When she stood in front of it, the tapping stopped. Then slowly, a handprint appeared on the inside of the glass. Faint, pale, and human. Ellen gasped and stumbled backward. The handprint faded instantly, leaving the glass perfectly clean. The next morning, she told Mark. He frowned. "You've been working too much. Maybe we move it into storage for a while." "No," she said quickly, "I'll get used to it." But she didn't. The next week, Ellen began noticing small things. Objects moving slightly out of place. A chair turned an inch away from the table. A photo frame tilted toward the mirror. Then one morning, she saw something that made her blood run cold. The mirror was fogged, as if someone had breathed on it, and written in the condensation were 3 words. "Look behind you." She froze. Her hands trembled as she turned slowly around. Nothing. The house was silent, just the ticking of the old clock in the next room. She wiped the message off with a shaking hand, refusing to look at the reflection again. When Mark came home that evening, he noticed how pale she was. "You need sleep," he said softly. "I'll cover the mirror tomorrow." But the next morning when he went to find her and she was gone, he searched the entire house, calling her name, checking every room. Her phone was still on the kitchen counter, her car keys on the hook. Then as he passed the mirror, something caught his eye. The reflection showed Ellen standing behind him. Her face was pale, her eyes wide, and her hand raised as if to touch his shoulder. He turned around. No one there. He backed away slowly, breath shaking. When he looked again, her reflection hadn't moved. She was still there, but now she was smiling. And something behind her began to move. A tall, shadowy figure emerged in the reflection, faceless, its shape shifting like smoke pressed into human form. Mark stumbled backward, grabbing a sheet from the table and throwing it over the mirror. The whispering started immediately. Dozens of voices, male, female, childlike, all speaking at once, too quiet to understand but full of pleading. Then a sharp crack split the air. The mirror shattered beneath the sheet, violently, as if something had struck from inside. Mark flinched, shielding his face. When he pulled the sheet away, the glass was broken but still intact within the frame. And in the shards, he saw movement. Hundreds of faint faces staring back at him, all frozen mid-scream. One of them was Ellen. The police never found her. Mark told them everything, but the story made no sense. No forced entry, no evidence of struggle, no footprints. After a few weeks, they called it a disappearance. He moved out shortly after, leaving the mirror behind in storage. He couldn't bring himself to destroy it. But 2 months later, the mirror was auctioned again. Refurbished, restored, and described as a valuable antique in excellent condition. The new owner, a collector in Vermont, left a glowing review. A beautiful piece, looks brand new, feels alive. Sometimes, late at night, guests swear they hear faint knocking from the glass. And when the room is quiet enough, the reflection of a woman can be seen standing just behind them, smiling faintly, waiting to be seen again. The hotel sat on the edge of a forgotten town, the kind you only find when your GPS loses signal. Caleb Miller hadn't planned to stay there. He was driving cross-country to visit his brother, but a sudden thunderstorm forced him off the highway. His phone battery was dying, the rain was relentless, and he hadn't slept in 20 hours. Then, like something out of nowhere, he saw the sign through the storm. Maple Hollow Motel, vacancy. The neon buzzed weakly, flickering red and white through sheets of rain. The lobby was small, lit by a single overhead bulb that hummed louder than the rain outside. The man behind the desk looked half asleep, his skin pale and papery. Just one night, Caleb said, exhausted. The clerk didn't look up. Room 6, end of the hall, cash only. Caleb handed over a few crumpled bills. The man slid a brass key across the counter without saying another word. When Caleb turned to leave, he thought he heard the man whisper something, a low murmur that almost got lost in the rain. Don't open the bathroom mirror after midnight. Caleb stopped. What? But the clerk had already turned away, pretending to write something in the ledger. Room 6 was colder than it should have been. The walls were yellowed with age, the carpet smelled faintly of mildew, and the ceiling fan turned lazily even though the switch was off. He tossed his bag on the bed and went to wash his face. The bathroom light buzzed as it flickered on. It was small, tiled in gray, the sink stained from years of use. But what caught his eye was the mirror. It stretched almost wall to wall, far too large for such a tiny bathroom. The edges were cracked, and the glass had dark patches that seemed to absorb the light. When he leaned closer, he realized there was something strange about it. It didn't just reflect light. It seemed to hold it, like the reflection had its own depth, darker and heavier than it should have been. He washed up and went straight to bed. The rain on the window helped him fall asleep quickly. But around 3:17 a.m., he woke up. At first, he didn't know why. The storm had quieted, and the room was completely still. Then he heard it, faint but distinct. Drip, drip, drip. The sound was coming from the bathroom. He sighed, half annoyed, and swung his legs out of bed. When he reached the bathroom door, the dripping stopped. He turned the handle slowly, the old wood creaking as it opened. The light inside was off, but the mirror still reflected the faint glow from the street outside. A soft blue haze. And in that reflection, something moved. At first, it looked like his own shadow shifting on the tiles. But when he stepped fully into the room, he realized his reflection wasn't following him. It was standing still, facing forward, even though he had turned his head toward the sink. He froze. Then his reflection blinked. Caleb stumbled back, heart pounding. "Okay, you're dreaming. You're overtired." He turned on the bathroom light. The reflection was gone, just his normal self staring back. He splashed water on his face and laughed nervously. Too much caffeine. But when he reached to turn off the tap, he saw it. A faint red smear on the mirror, like a handprint dragging downward. The next morning, he told the front desk clerk. "There's something wrong with the mirror in room 6, Caleb said. "I think it's leaking from behind or something." The old man didn't react. He just stared. Then he said quietly, "The mirror's fine. You should leave before dark." Caleb frowned. "Look, I paid for the night. I'll leave in the morning." The clerk just turned the page of his ledger. "Don't open it again." "What do you mean, open it?" Caleb asked, but the man didn't answer. That evening, Caleb sat on the edge of the bed, scrolling through his phone even though there was no signal. He could still hear it and faint dripping from the bathroom. It hadn't stopped all day. Finally, around midnight, frustration got the better of him. He grabbed his flashlight and went to check behind the mirror. It wasn't fixed to the wall, just slightly loose with a narrow crack running along the edge. He wedged his fingers behind the glass and pulled. It shifted forward with a soft, sticky sound, and a rush of cold air hit his face. Behind the mirror was a hollow space, and inside it, something was breathing. Caleb stumbled backward, hitting the sink. The flashlight flickered. From the gap behind the mirror came the slow rhythm of human breath. Deep, wet, uneven. He whispered, "Hello?" The sound stopped. Then something tapped the glass from the inside. Once, twice, then harder. A faint voice followed, low, muffled, impossible to understand. He dropped the flashlight. It rolled under the sink, spilling light upward. And for one brief second, he saw a face, pressed against the other side of the mirror, pale, rotten, its mouth open in a silent scream. He ran for the door, but it wouldn't open. The handle turned freely, but the lock wouldn't release. Behind him, the mirror began to move. Not crack, breathe. The surface bulged outward, like something was pushing from the other side, pressing against it. The glass stretching and warping without breaking. He could see hands now, several of them, all pressing out, clawing silently, their fingertips scraping against the inside of the mirror. And beneath the sound of scratching, he heard the dripping again. Only this time it wasn't water. It was blood. Thin red lines ran from the bottom of the mirror, tracing along the floor toward his feet. He pounded on the door, screaming for help. No answer. The mirror's reflection grew darker, not black, but empty, like the light inside had died. Then a whisper came, clear and sharp, right by his ear. "You opened it." The lights went out. When the police arrived the next morning, they found the door to room 6 locked from the inside. The guest was gone. Only his clothes and wallet remained, folded neatly on the bed. The mirror had been wiped clean, spotless, except for a faint handprint pressed into the glass from the inside. The motel owner told them Caleb must have left in the night, but when they removed the mirror during renovation a year later, they found something behind it, a narrow hollow filled with claw marks, and among the dust and plaster a small brass key tag, room 6. The Maple Hollow Motel was torn down years ago. But sometimes when storms hit that valley, travelers still claim to see an old neon sign flickering red through the trees. Vacancy. And if they stop to rest, they swear they hear faint dripping through the night, followed by a voice whispering, "Don't open the mirror." When Naomi Wells moved into her new apartment, she told herself it was a fresh start. New job, new city, new life. She was done with the past, with the breakup, the small town, the empty nights. The place wasn't much, but it was hers. A top-floor studio with big windows, creaking wood floors, and a long wall mirror beside the bed. She liked that mirror. It made the room feel bigger, alive, as if she wasn't living alone. That comfort didn't last long. The first time it happened was on a Tuesday morning. Naomi was running late for work, brushing her hair quickly while the coffee maker sputtered behind her. She caught something strange in the reflection, barely noticeable. Her reflection didn't move at the same speed. It lagged, just a half second. A blink delayed, a brushstroke slightly late. She froze, staring at the mirror. Then it caught up, perfectly in sync again. She laughed it off. "Glitch in the matrix," she muttered, grabbing her purse. That night, she couldn't stop thinking about it. She stood in front of the mirror for a long time, testing it, raising her arms, turning her head, blinking fast. Everything was normal, until she smiled. Her reflection didn't. It just stared back, expressionless, eyes darker than they should have been. She stepped closer, squinting. What the hell? Then it smiled. Slowly, too slowly. Naomi stumbled backward, knocking over her nightstand. When she looked again, everything was normal. Same reflection, same tired face, but she could still feel it watching her. The next morning, she avoided the mirror completely. She brushed her teeth with her eyes down, did her makeup in the hallway using her phone camera. But that night, she caught herself glancing at it again, and the strangest thought crept into her mind. What if it wasn't copying me anymore? What if it was learning? She shook her head and laughed. "You sound insane." But the next night proved she wasn't. She woke up around 2 a.m. to the faint sound of scratching. It was coming from the wall beside her bed, where the mirror hung. Soft, slow, deliberate scratches. Naomi sat up, heart pounding. The sound stopped. The room was dark, except for the faint streetlight glow slipping through the blinds. She turned on her lamp. The mirror looked normal, except for one thing. There were fingerprints on the inside of the glass. 5 smudged prints dragging downward. She backed away, phone in hand. "Nope, no. She dialed her friend Lena. "Can I crash at your place? Something's wrong with my apartment." Lena groaned sleepily. "It's 2:30 in the morning, Naomi." "I'm serious, the mirror..." "What about it?" It's wrong. It's like it's alive." There was silence. Then Lena said softly, "You still have that big wall mirror?" "Yeah, why?" "Naomi, I told you to check the back before hanging it." "What do you mean?" "It came from my old roommate's place. She found it at a thrift store, said it was antique. But after she hung it, she started seeing herself do things she hadn't done yet." Naomi felt cold. Like what? Like smiling at things that weren't there, or waving when she was alone. The call dropped. The next morning, Naomi tore the mirror off the wall. It was heavier than she expected. When she leaned it forward, a piece of old newspaper fluttered out from behind it. It was dated 1979, yellow and brittle, with a short article circled in red. "Woman found dead in front of mirror, apartment 6B. Cause of death unknown. Witnesses claim her reflection was still moving after she fell." Naomi's hands shook. She covered the mirror with a blanket and left it propped against the wall. That night, she slept facing away from it. Around 3 a.m., she woke to the faint creak of fabric. The blanket was sliding off the mirror. slowly, as if pulled from underneath.
She froze.
Then from the glass a faint whisper came. "Naomi?" Her heart slammed against her ribs. "Who's there?" The reflection answered, her voice but softer, more distant. "You don't sleep much anymore," she gasped. "Stop it, stop!" The reflection smiled. Then it said almost kindly, "You could let me rest instead." The glass began to ripple faintly, like water disturbed by breath. Naomi stumbled back as her reflection started walking forward, not out of sync anymore, ahead. The reflection moved before she did, stepping closer to the other side of the glass. "You look tired," it whispered. "Let me take over." Naomi ran to the door, but it wouldn't open. The knob turned endlessly. Behind her, the mirror's surface pulsed again, brighter this time, like something burning from within. The reflection pressed its hands against the glass, and for the first time they pushed through. The hand slid out, pale and dripping like liquid mercury. Naomi screamed as the reflection pulled itself free, standing upright, identical, but perfect, its skin flawless, its expression calm. She stumbled backward, crashing into the dresser. "What are you?" The reflection smiled gently. "You, the better version." When police arrived the next morning, they found the apartment empty. The door was locked from the inside. Only one thing seemed out of place. The mirror was spotless, gleaming as if newly polished. And in its reflection, there was a woman standing quietly in the room, one who wasn't there when you turned around. The new tenant moved in 3 weeks later. She loved the place, and especially the mirror. In her first review, she wrote, "The apartment is perfect. I love how the mirror feels almost alive. Sometimes it smiles before I do." Every town has a place that doesn't feel real after dark. For Eddie Rowe, that place was the carnival. It came every summer without warning, a field of flickering lights, the smell of sugar and rust, and the faint sound of calliope music twisting through the wind. Eddie had worked security there for years. He was a quiet man in his late 40s, a widower, the kind of person people forgot about as soon as they looked away. His job was simple: walk the grounds after midnight, make sure no kids snuck in, lock up the tents, and report anything strange to the manager. And every year he dreaded one tent more than any other: the Hall of Mirrors. The hall stood at the far edge of the fairground, its entrance shaped like a giant clown mouth with fading red paint and teeth that had yellowed over decades. Inside was a labyrinth of glass and reflection, long corridors lined with mirrors, each slightly warped to make your own image look stretched, twisted, or too real. Eddie had to check it every night after closing. "Just reflections," he would mutter under his breath, flashlight cutting through the stillness. But something about that tent never felt right. He swore the air inside was colder than anywhere else, and sometimes, when he walked by a mirror, his reflection didn't follow right away. One night near closing, one of the younger workers, a kid named Marcos, came running up to him, pale and shaking. "There's someone still in the hall," he stammered. "A woman. I saw her go in, but she hasn't come out." Eddie sighed. "Probably a drunk tourist. Go home, I'll take care of it." He grabbed his flashlight and stepped through the clown's mouth. The instant he entered, the carnival sounds outside died away. Inside, the only noise was the faint hum of fluorescent bulbs and the echo of his own footsteps. "Hello?" he called out. "Ma'am, we're closed." No answer. He followed the twisting path between mirrors, his flashlight sweeping over endless versions of himself. Some smiled faintly as the light passed over them, others didn't. He told himself he was imagining it. The mirrors were warped, that's all. But halfway down the corridor, his beam caught something, movement at the far end of the maze. A woman. She stood perfectly still, her back turned, long black hair reaching past her shoulders. "Ma'am, you can't be here," he said, his voice echoing. "You need to come with me." She didn't respond. He walked closer, keeping the light steady. "Hey!" And then she was gone. He stopped, staring. There was nowhere to go, just walls of mirrors. He shone his light around frantically, seeing only reflections of himself, dozens of them, each frozen mid-stride. Then in one of the mirrors he saw her again, standing behind him this time. He turned quickly and nothing. But when he looked back at the mirror, she was closer. Her face wasn't visible, just her outline, hands pressed flat against the glass from the inside. Eddie stumbled backward. The air grew heavy and cold. "Okay," he whispered. "You're just tired. You're seeing things." But the figure began moving, not walking, sliding closer through the mirror like something underwater. The lights flickered. In the brief dark, he heard a sound, a single laugh, childlike and cruel, echoing from everywhere at once. When the lights came back on, the mirrors had changed. His flashlight beam revealed a new corridor, one that shouldn't have been there. Every mirror now reflected him standing in different poses, one looking away, one with his eyes closed, one smiling too wide. And at the very end of the hallway stood his reflection, still and waiting, though he hadn't moved. Eddie called out, "Who's there?" The reflection raised its hand. He froze. He hadn't. Then it lowered the flashlight in the reflection's hand. The real one in Eddie's grip flickered out. Darkness swallowed the hall. Panic surged through him. He reached for his radio, but the static only hissed faintly. Then a whisper came through the noise. "You've been here before." He froze. "What?" "You never left." The voice was his own, distorted, hollow, like it was echoing through glass. He dropped the radio. It hit the floor, the sound echoing 100 times across the mirrors. When he crouched to pick it up, something caught his eye. In every reflection, he was kneeling except one. That version of him was standing, smiling, holding a flashlight. The beam flicked on from inside the mirror, and then it started walking toward him. He stumbled back, shouting, "Stop, stop!" The reflections around him began to shift, their faces twisting, eyes widening, mouths opening in silent screams. The mirrors pulsed like living things. He could hear faint banging from the other side, as if something was trying to get out. Then one by one the mirrors began to crack. Not from his side, from within. Shards split open, each revealing flashes of movement. Figures trapped behind the glass, pounding, reaching, faces distorted in eternal panic. One of them looked exactly like Marcos. Eddie's flashlight flickered back on for just a second, and in that moment he saw his reflection standing directly in front of him, pressed against the glass. But this time it wasn't smiling. It looked terrified. It mouthed something, just one word. "Run!" Eddie turned and sprinted, the narrow corridors folding endlessly. No matter which direction he ran, he ended up back at the same spot, facing the same cracked mirror. The figure inside, his double, began pounding the glass, harder and harder, until the sound was deafening. And then with a sharp crack, it broke through. A spray of cold air hit Eddie's face as a hand reached out, identical to his own. It grabbed his wrist. He screamed as he was pulled forward, into the glass, the cold swallowing him whole. The mirror rippled once, then went still. The next morning, carnival workers found the Hall of Mirrors door wide open. The lights inside still buzzed faintly, though the power had been cut. Room after room of glass, spotless, untouched. But in the central corridor, one mirror stood cracked, a single handprint pressed against the inside. And when they looked into it, their reflections stared back normally, except one, which still held a flashlight. The carnival packed up that week. A year later, it returned to another town, another empty field. And so did the Hall of Mirrors. Local kids dared each other to go inside. Some swore they saw a man walking the halls with a flashlight calling softly, "It's closing time." But when they turned to look, no one was there. Only their own reflections. And one, smiling faintly in the glass even when they weren't. Amber Ross hated her reflection. Not out of vanity, as it was deeper than that. Every time she looked into a mirror, she saw something cold in her own eyes, something that didn't belong to her. After her parents' divorce, she moved into her grandmother's old house, a creaky Victorian on the edge of town, left untouched for years. She was 17. Her grandmother had died there, alone, and the house still smelled faintly of lavender and dust. The first few days were fine, until she went up to the attic. The attic was cluttered with boxes, old furniture, and the heavy smell of mothballs. Amber found photo albums, jewelry, and a stack of yellowed newspapers. But what caught her attention was a mirror, a tall vanity mirror with an ornate silver frame cracked at the top. The fracture ran like a lightning bolt through the glass, dividing her reflection into two slightly mismatched halves. She leaned closer. Weird. The glass shimmered faintly, just for a moment, like light rippling across water. Then it was still again. She decided it would look good in her room. That night, the house was quiet except for the ticking of an old clock in the hallway. Amber sat at her desk doing homework, the mirror standing just behind her. Every so often she thought she saw movement in the reflection, subtle shifts of shadow like someone walking behind her. But whenever she turned around, there was nothing. By midnight, she decided she was just tired. She shut her laptop, turned off the lamp, and crawled into bed. But sleep didn't come easily. From somewhere in the room came a faint, irregular sound, like a soft tapping on glass. Tap, tap, tap. Amber sat up, heart racing. Her eyes adjusted to the dark. The mirror stood still. Then she noticed it, a faint hairline crack crawling farther down the glass. The next morning, the crack had vanished. Not faded, gone. She ran her fingers along the surface, smooth, cold. When she leaned in closer, she thought she saw something strange. Her reflection's eyes didn't quite match hers. They looked sharper, a shade darker. And when she tilted her head, her reflection didn't. Amber stumbled backward, gasping. Then her reflection smiled. She didn't tell anyone. Who would believe her? But over the next few days, she started to notice things. The reflection would blink late or turn its head first, or seem to look directly at her instead of through her. And sometimes at night, she'd wake up and see movement in the mirror. Her reflection pacing slowly, even though she hadn't moved. She told herself it was stress, grief, imagination, until Thursday night. That was when the reflection spoke. Amber had fallen asleep with the lamp still on, her homework scattered across the bed. At 3:04 a.m., she woke to silence, then faintly a whisper from the direction of the mirror. "Why did you break it?" Her eyes snapped open. "What?" The whisper came again, her own voice this time. "You broke the frame." She stared at the mirror. Her reflection was sitting up, awake, even though she wasn't moving. The reflection leaned closer. "Do you know what happens when you break the frame?" Amber's throat went dry. "Stop it. You let it out." The lamp flickered. The reflection smiled, not cruelly, just knowingly. Then the light went out. Amber scrambled for her phone. The faint glow illuminated her reflection. But now there were two of them. One mirrored her perfectly. The other stood slightly behind, its face half hidden in shadow, smiling too wide. Her phone slipped from her hand. A faint crack echoed through the room, the sound of glass straining. Then suddenly the mirror split down the middle. Amber screamed and stumbled back as shards of glass scattered across the floor. But when she looked again, the mirror was still standing. Perfect, whole, except her reflection wasn't there. The glass showed her room, her bed, her lamp, but not her. Then she heard a voice behind her. "I'm over here." She turned slowly. Her reflection stood on the other side of the room, outside the mirror, smiling gently. It looked exactly like her. "You left the crack open," it said. "I crawled through." Amber backed away, shaking her head. "You're not real." "I wasn't, but you made me." The reflection tilted its head. "Don't worry, you'll get used to the quiet." The lights flickered again. The reflection stepped closer, moving silently. Amber grabbed a shard of broken glass from the floor. "Stay away." Her double smiled faintly. "I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to take your place." Then it lunged. Amber slashed out instinctively, the shard cutting across her reflection's cheek. The wound bled black, thick like ink. The figure recoiled, glaring. That was a mistake. The mirror behind them began to ripple again, pulling at the air like water. The reflection grabbed her wrist. Amber screamed as the glass stretched outward, pulling them both in, the room bending and twisting around her. And then silence. The next morning, her aunt stopped by to check on her. The door was unlocked, the bed unmade. The only strange thing was the mirror. It stood in the corner, spotless, newly polished. And for the first time in years, the frame wasn't cracked. When her aunt looked closer, she thought she saw something move behind the glass. A hand. A face that looked like Amber's, pressing faintly against the inside. She shook her head. "Grief does strange things," she whispered, turning away. But as she closed the door, a faint voice came from the mirror. Quiet, calm, almost relieved. "Fixed now." Weeks later, the mirror appeared for sale in an antique store downtown. Its listing described it as a beautiful silver-framed vanity, restored, excellent condition. Looks new, almost too new. The buyer left a review a week later. "Perfect mirror, lovely glow at night. Sometimes it even looks like it's breathing." If you made it this far, thank you for spending your night with us. If these stories gave you chills, there's plenty more waiting. Don't forget to subscribe to Night Fear Stories for new terrifying tales every single night. Sleep well, if you can.